I think we have virtually everyone who's signed up, which is good. So first off, I'd like to thank everybody for attending our webinar today. I'm Rob Ianni. I'm the Area Vice President for TOLA for Imperva. And we really appreciate you guys, everybody on, taking the time to come and listen to our topic today. So our topic today is around how the working from home has kind of changed things, obviously, and in the security and cybersecurity business, it's creating some challenges and some vulnerabilities that weren't necessarily the organizations that you work for and organizations around the globe didn't necessarily have a few weeks ago. So this new normal is creating some things we're seeing in the marketplace. And we want to take an hour just to share with you what we're seeing in the marketplace and maybe give some best practices, some ideas that we've seen customers of ours take, what we've recommended to customers, and just want to share the information with everybody so that you're getting some feedback in this different time that we're all in. Couple housekeeping issues. So there's obviously going to be some questions. We hope there's a lot of questions. We'd ask that questions come in two forms. If it's during the presentation, if you can put it in chat, and we'll pick out those messages up and answer them as we go. And then at the end of the presentation today, we'll leave some time for Q&A as well too. So without further ado, we'll kick this off, and I'd like to kick this off. We have Rich Blaze, who's a senior solutions engineer for us out of the Dallas office for us, and I think a lot of you on the call know Rich and met him. We also have James Treadway, and our team lead and senior solutions engineer at Imperva, and both have been with us a very long time and put some content together, and we'll take it from here to hopefully give you some information that y'all can use. Rich, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Rob. Appreciate it. As Rob had mentioned, I'm not sure if you guys see both options of a Q&A discussion area or a chat. Use the Q&A. I don't know if both options show up for you, but Q&A is what you want if you want to present a question. Got James on standby there to go ahead and take a look at those at the fly and introduce your questions live when they pop up. All right. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen out for you and get the presentation going. All right, here we go. All right, so we're here to go ahead and talk about what is the new norm, okay, which is basically working from home and the security risks that adds to this. All right, so our goals for this webinar are to inform and bring awareness to the heightened security risks, discuss what to look for in a solution and how to protect your business. Again, these are everything that I'm going to talk about are solutions, options that are out there for you to help protect you from this changing day and age. Right? There's a lot more working from home, a lot more people connecting remotely, whether it's over VPN or using login pages that aren't typically used because you're there in the office. We're going to talk about some of those risks that introduces. We'll talk about what IT and security teams are struggling with, to go ahead and maintain that atmosphere of working from home, and the problems that they're facing, being so thinly spread out. They're distracted over here with, solving the day-to-day issues of what is the new norm now, people connecting or not being able to connect. And those hackers out there are going to seize that opportunity. While they're looking here, they're going to go ahead and attack there, right? Talk about bandwidth consumption, and maybe what problems that's causing. We'll talk a little bit about what is account takeover, what that means and what risks that imposes, particularly to back-end data. What are the latest attack trends and how to find out, what they are, what tools are available for that, and what can you do now, right? We all know that sometimes, you can't implement a solution, right off the cuff, but maybe you can, right? We'll talk about some of those options. All right, so the article that I'm presenting right now shows a heightened recent increase in account takeover attacks. Due to COVID-19 quarantine or anything that might promote more activity online exposes new ways to exploit an unplanned surge in traffic. New vulnerabilities are found. Websites that never saw much activity or were not accessed publicly before are now heavily utilized. And any security flaws never discovered before are now more exposed and can be exploited. I'm sure a number of you guys have been doing reading on your own. So, you have your own, web security forums or whatever, and you've seen things like these articles that I'm presenting right now. Here's another recent article that states the rapid shift to remote work has made a security defender's job of keeping people, systems, networks, and data safe much more difficult. All right. The key message here is that organizations are unprepared for this volume of remote work. Changes in network access that were not vetted, planned, or tested are vulnerable to attack. I'm going to use my own experience here. My wife's working from home today, right? She works for a bank, and she's making remote connections into her office, and every now and again she runs into a problem where she's got to open up a case and reach out to IT, and she's telling me, man, it takes forever for IT to reach out back to her and answer her because they've got so much going on, right? So while they're trying to solve just the increased day-to-day issues, what is the new norm, right, of remote workers, they're having a hard time keeping track and an eye on things that they used to be able to do every day, to look for anomalies and weird things that are happening. So they're trying to get used to, serving everybody's needs as well as keeping the business safe. So we here at Imperva, we have a number of POPs throughout the globe, where we're watching internet traffic, come and go to protected web applications, right? And these are some of the logs, some of the statistics that we pulled from our own systems. On the left, you see that news and food and beverage industries and retail and gaming, they've all gone up dramatically in traffic. And on the right side are the decreases, right? Sporting events, right? There's not a whole lot of live sporting events going on. So, that traffic, as well as a number of other industries, don't see as much traffic. So it's a shift. Anytime there's a major shift in where traffic is going, it's not the norm anymore, and we have to learn, what to look for as far as an attack or exposed vulnerabilities, right? To read a little bit more about, what we're seeing, right? You can take a look at, Imperva's blog. It's labeled COVID-19 to read a little bit more about some of these logs that we pulled. And there's a number of other blogs out there that I've read that kind of show these same statistics. All right. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the tools, some of the solutions that are out there. We've got our own, and there's a number of other solutions out there that you can explore and figure out what best fits for you. All right. And I've kind of put a little shorthand note, get my little laser pointer out here, just so that you can kind of reference some of those terms, and I'll call them out as need be. So first thing here, some of the new problems that I've read in some of these articles is the harder hit industries based on the table that I just showed you. Have a larger risk surface that's showing up. Vulnerable applications that haven't really been maybe vetted as much as they should have because they didn't see a whole lot of traffic, so they weren't prioritized. Right now they are. Now they're being used, from home a lot more, and they need more protection. Right. So, what can be done to help protect those? We can introduce a cloud WAF. Right. A cloud WAF is there. A web application firewall is there to go ahead and monitor the ins and outs, the traffic, the HTTP, HTTPS traffic that's going back and forth from those applications, and it's looking for malicious activity and can block that malicious activity from happening, therefore keeping your application healthy. And everybody, needs all the business they can get. They can't afford for their websites to go down right now. So a cloud web application firewall is one of those tools you can utilize to help protect your web applications. Bad actors are going after customer, member, employee logins to gain access to back-end sensitive data. new signs of credential stuffing and site scraping are being seen kind of an alarming rate right now. So ATO and bot protection is another solution that you can look into to monitor those login pages and prevent the use of stolen credentials and bad bot activity. You know, there's all kinds of credentials, millions of credentials, stolen credentials that can be bought on the dark web, and that's what these attackers are using with bots to go ahead and stuff them into login pages, hoping that one of them is going to work. We've got a username and password that's been used throughout a number of different websites, and they're hoping it's going to work on yours, right, and get access to a back-end data. SIMs have been configured to look for unusual traffic activity. IT admins are having trouble establishing a new baseline. So DDoS attackers are taking advantage of COVID-19 quarantining, right? We need some sort of DDoS protection to bring peace of mind. While IT is busy looking there, right, we've got protection over here. We can't, you know, there's only so much that security admins can do in a day, right? And if they're dealing with all kinds of new issues that are popping up when people are working from home, they might not have the eyes and the time to go ahead and look for, you know, what's abnormal right now. Logs are showing more API activity. So sorting through what's legitimate and what's an attack is overwhelming them right now. So API security is another tool set that can be implemented to go ahead and look for anomalous activity. You know, like a cloud WAF, you know, API security can be implemented to watch for those web applications that that allow API connections to come through, and we can detect a malicious activity and prevent a breach from happening. All right.
Hey, Rich.
So here, yeah, go ahead.
Just to let you know, we've had a question come in about whether a cloud WAF allows for greater security or more beneficial than an on-premise WAF. And I can take a shot at answering that, and then you can feel free to add your color there. But
please,
based on the last slide, yeah. So you know, it can be done both ways. Both solutions can have benefits. There's kind of pros and cons to each. I think one of the pros for cloud WAF is if the attack surface, if the login page, the web application, the account takeover scenario that we're talking about here, that's usually carried out by a network of bots. So a bot operator is the one who has somehow gained access to, you know, leaked credentials. He's rented them, or he's stolen them, or he's bought them off the dark web, and he's feeding it to a botnet, right? So if you can prevent all of that unwanted bot traffic out in the cloud at the edge before it reaches you, then you're certainly safer, and you're also relaxing and easing the resource utilization on your data center. And so that's important especially if it's a brick and mortar data center, but also if you're in AWS, or Azure, or some other public cloud, you're paying for that compute time. So that would be one advantage to having the solution in the cloud: prevent DDoS and prevent bot attacks further away from you. I don't know if, Rich, you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, great point. As far as another benefit to a cloud WAF is, I spoke earlier. It's like, you know, one of the things we're going to touch on is like what you can do today, right? Onboarding a web page, website to be protected through a cloud WAF can be done in 10 or 15 minutes or less. You know, with an on-prem solution, it's a great solution, right? But there's equipment to deploy, right? There's you gotta understand how to use it. You've got to make arrangements with other members of your team. You know, and the person in the data center to rack it and assign IP resources to it, and who's going to manage it, that sort of thing. Again, If all that is planned, that's great. It's a great tool set. But if we're looking at protecting ourselves today, right? I'm already seeing, issues with my website, and I don't know what to tell my management as far as what we can do right now. This is something you can do right now. Is reach out, talk to us or some other cloud WAF provider, and get that website onboarded and sending that traffic through to that cloud, that edge protection before the attack ever gets to you.
Great point, Rich. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Anything else? Any other questions that we should introduce right now?
Nope, not at this time, but a reminder to everyone that feel free you should have a Q&A option there. And if you have any further questions, pop them in there and we'll get them answered for you.
All right. Thanks, James. So I mentioned a few solutions here that we can put in place. Let me back up one second here and make sure I didn't skip anything. So I mentioned a few different solutions here: Cloud WAF, right? ATO and bot protection, DDoS protection, API security solution, right? All of these are going to generate their own alerts for you to go ahead and take a look at. One of the terms that's fast becoming kind of like a household name here is alert fatigue, right? In the sense that you've got too much to look at, right? And I don't care how good the solution is, if you can only look at 5 or 10% of what it's trying to tell you, then 90% of it is useless, right? So you need something to pull it all together. You need an analytics engine to bring it all together and prioritize it and tell you what you should take a look at first. And not only that, but to give you some actionable insights to let you know what you need to do next. So here's a look at an example dashboard, right, that kind of does that. It basically shows you the number of events that have kind of come through, right? They've been aggregated together to show you, hey, these are all SQL injection type attacks, and it's prioritizing them for you, right? Critical, major, medium, minor, right? So that you can determine what you're going to spend your time on first. Obviously, if I look at something like this, I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to take a look at what's critical, right, and dive into it and take a look at what's actually happening here. What are the applications that we're seeing SQL injection come through? Things like that. All right. Another issue that's kind of come up is bandwidth, right? With so much traffic coming in from home now, some organizations aren't prepared for it. And again, bringing in my own personal experience with my wife working from home, her company just merged with another company. Now, the company that she used to work, she worked for, was prepared, for employees working from home, but the larger company that just bought her bank out wasn't, right? In fact, they kind of had a policy against, working from home and, kept it to a minimum. So now that they're one big company and everybody's working from home, there's a good portion of the business that's not prepared for it. And they're struggling to find ways to deal with that, right? So solutions that can kind of, help maybe improve web applications and the responses back to the clients is a content delivery network. Whether you've got a separate solution that you're using for that, that's fine. Maybe it's time to go ahead and reach out to that particular vendor and ask for an assessment to do some fine tuning on that to make sure that it's working the way it should be, to optimize that web application response back to the client. If you don't have a CDN solution, maybe, and you're interested in some sort of a cloud WAF, maybe you should be looking at, a cloud WAF that includes a CDN, right? So a couple other, quotes from articles I've read: web servers are near capacity. There's no time or resources to address this, right? You can't just, whip up a number of, cloned web servers and start distributing them, so what can I do? Again, a CDN can kind of help with that. In fact, this is why some of the best cloud WAFs out there have the CDN built in because, when you implement some sort of security solution, it might go ahead and actually hurt the response time. So if a CDN is built in, not only can it compensate for that response time, but it can help improve the customer experience, and that response time will be shorter. Load balancers are also an important feature, right? To be able to go ahead and distribute that load. If you can go ahead, if you're in the cloud, in Amazon AWS services or Amazon Azure, right, and you can spin up another web server in another region, right, then you can go ahead and use that load balancer to distribute that load and again, increase that customer experience. Any other questions that may pop in at this point?
Yeah, Rich, one quick one came across about, if you go back to the last slide, about for compliance reasons, the question was around restricting to certain regions for compliance regions like GDPR, if we wanted to restrict traffic or restrict data to a certain geo. So yeah, absolutely. The answer to that is yes. As far as, we can't speak for other services, and this isn't really an Imperva specific presentation, but it's as far as Imperva CDN, we can restrict those to specific regions. So the answer to that is yes.
All right. Okay, a little bit about account takeover protection. So cyber criminals access accounts through hacked credentials, right? They find them on the dark web, and they start pounding login pages with thousands, if not millions, of stolen credentials. Each account holds rewards that can be transferred. Cyber criminals transfer the rewards more than likely to themselves, right? There's money to be made there. So take a look at some of these numbers. $5.1 billion was lost to ATO, to account takeover in 2018. 7 billion records were compromised worldwide. And 60% of people reuse passwords on multiple devices. And, like I said, from personal experience, I've had to educate my own family about doing this. I've helped by providing tools so that they can easily create a unique password for every website, because and this happened to my wife. She goes ahead and logs into a restaurant or whatever to go ahead and order food or whatever, and that website did not have really good security measures put into the web application, so her credentials got stolen. And they weren't able to log into that site, but they were using those credentials to either log into some other sites or send an email, kind of like a ransom email, and say, "Hey, we've got your password, and we've hacked your email account. We've turned on your camera. We've recorded images," and things like that. Now, she brought that to my attention, and I know none of that's true, because I've got the safeguards against my cameras, and they can't simply access the camera. They're going to see a black background. So I knew that ransom email was just to go ahead and generate an alarm in people, and so they'll go ahead and give them whatever they want, right? They were asking for Bitcoin in order to go ahead and delete all these pictures they say they took while the camera was on. So there's a lot of vulnerabilities out there just to steal your credentials and be able to try to hack in to a login page that somebody has used. 60% of passwords are reused across multiple sites, and they'll find it, and they'll get through. Right? We need tools to be able to give us that visibility. Right? So, like example of this dashboard here, it's telling us, 11, for this particular small to medium-sized customer, there's a case study that we did on this. 11,000 logins, were detected in a given time frame. 30% of them were account takeover attempts, right? It shows it right here. Okay. It tells us, if we dig into the details, it can tell us where those attacks are coming from. In this case, it was from France. There were 9 different IP addresses that it was coming from, right? They were listed as spammer IPs. And it even identified the tool they were trying to use to get through, the Python tool, okay? So we need a tool like this, something similar to this, to go ahead and let us know, what are the attempts? Are there any attempts, right? And are they successful? Were they able to get past that login page, and what other damage is being created by these attempts, right? So first and foremost, if we can identify how many compromised accounts there are and which accounts those are, we can go ahead and block them down, reset the password, and let those users know, hey, you need to reset your password at this point. So real quick, go ahead and just talk about what an account takeover is, right? So we start with stolen credentials. Again, they can be found on the dark web by the hundreds of thousands or millions, right? We take those credentials and we use a bot to go ahead and stuff them into all these different login pages, right? Hoping that we're gonna get lucky here. We're gonna find a login page that accepts these credentials, and now they're in, right? They've gained access, right? So that's just the first step, right? At this point, they're a little further into your network than they were before, and now they can start trying other tools, right? Their goal is to get to these back-end assets, your data, right? To be able to steal credit card information or healthcare information or personal information, right? And then do who knows what with that information. Again, there's money to be made there, right? Again, in these lists that they put back on the dark web. To add insult to injury, they're also consuming your bandwidth. So if you've got your web applications in Amazon AWS or Microsoft Azure, you're paying for this bandwidth utilization, right? So, like I said, we as Imperva or other solutions should reside on the edge. Imperva does, other solutions do as well, and therefore we'll go ahead and prevent that traffic from ever actually getting to your resource there in the cloud, and therefore taking your money there. You're paying for that bandwidth being consumed. And then, of course, it's, the end result is you keep your brand intact, right? If you have to go ahead and go through that long, uncomfortable conversation with a customer saying, "Hey, your data has been stolen, and here's the steps we're taking, to go ahead and protect you from anything further," right? If only to go ahead and keep that breach being minimum, from just a couple of hundred instead of a few million data assets. That's an improvement. So protect your brand. That's what we're talking about here.
Hey, Rich. Hi,
Yes,
Rich.
sir.
If you'll go back, there was a couple of questions. One is a general question around security software spend in 2018. Do we know how much was spent on security software and services in 2018? Great question. I don't know if we have an exact number, but we're seeing from resources like Gartner that it was around over 100 billion. So Gartner's saying 114 billion on technology and services 2018. I think we've seen some other numbers that are a little higher, some a little lower. So around there, I mean, so it's a pretty significant number. Another question was a little bit more specific around the account takeover and credential stuffing on a login page. Does your service require the use of a CAPTCHA to prevent this from happening? And I'll take a shot at that, Rich. If the answer to that is no, it's not required. There are some situations where we can use a CAPTCHA for some advanced bot situations, more around checkout pages or whatever we want to do, but no, it's not required. It's behavioral based, so we're looking at several different aspects of the login request itself, and we can determine whether it's a bad request or not based on that, but whether it's an attack or not based on a lot of the different telemetry that we're looking at there. So no on the CAPTCHA question.
All right, thanks, James. And just a real quick add to that. I know that CAPTCHA is all fine and good, but again, when we're talking about keeping a good user experience, right? If I'm a customer and I'm cruising a website and I'm trying to make a purchase or something, and all of a sudden, whoop, a CAPTCHA pops up, I'm like, maybe I don't need this right now, and I just kind of go away from it. So a CAPTCHA is beneficial, for a number of different use cases and applications, but maybe not for others. So my goal, as the retailer would be only use a CAPTCHA unless absolutely, only when I absolutely need it, right? If I can put other security measures in place to keep up the user experience, I'm going to want to do that, right? And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. Thanks for the question. Okay, so what mitigated controls are available, today? What a number of these controls might be implemented right now in your environment, or maybe you're thinking about bumping it up. So right now, like a password policy, a complex password policy, or maybe right now you only required 8 characters in your password, and in light of the what's going on today and the heightened risk, right? You're thinking of bumping that up to 12, right? Okay, that's okay. That's good. But remember, there's a downside to that, right? Customers are probably going to have a lot hard time remembering 12 character password or longer. Resets are inevitable, right? And again, we're trying to keep up the user experience, right? If you're just a work from home employee and you got to log in, well, have a good password vault that you use to go ahead and keep track of all that stuff. But when we're talking about customers, we want to keep up a good customer experience. Other options are like to replace the password with some sort of biometrics, card reader, right? Again, for employees, that's fine. The business provides. Sometimes it requires like a third-party tool, thumbprint reader or card reader or something like that. Those tools are great, right? But again, from a customer perspective, that's not an option, right? Multi-factor authentication, that's usually considered maybe one of the best options, right? There's a couple of different methods, adaptive and robust MFA, that you can put in place. But all of these options, they can and will lead to a delay in login and contribute to a negative customer experience, which in a sense, it drives the business to maybe delay. Do we really need this, right? Do we have visibility that we're being attacked? Well, maybe we'll just hold off on deploying more security measures, because cash is king, right? If it's going to hurt the business, they're not going to want to do it. So a couple other things, other pulls from articles that I've done here is, maybe explain why these attacks happen. Money, right? It always points back to money. There's money to be made with reward points, a list of stolen credentials that can be put on the dark web. There's cash to be made from that. So this highlighted section here, if you collect supermarket loyalty points that can be spent or transferred online, hackers take over your account and steal the points, right? There's cash to be made from that, right? Every time one of these leaks happens, they go on sale across the dark web. And leaks in the sense that those stolen credentials, they build huge database lists of valid email addresses, usernames and passwords and things like that, and they sell those off, right? They make money out of that. And then finally, one-click purchasing will be impacted, and customers might go through might not go through the impulse buy, right? I've done that myself. I've been in the garage and I was like, hey, I need this, right? And I bring up, my Amazon app and I go ahead and, purchase, right? But if I've had to go through a number of different hoops or hurdles to go ahead and get there, I might rethink it. Maybe I don't need this right now, right? And that costs a retailer money. All right. So what are some of the other considerations that we can put in place versus some of these other mitigating controls, right? ATO protection, So ATO solution should maintain the existing or improve even the customer experience. The right ATO and or bot protection is seamless to clients. Protection measures are applied at the edge, not the browser. Consider a solution with no appliances, agents, plugins, or software to install. Does that sort of thing even exist? It does. Protection and scrubbing engines should be in the cloud so bad traffic never consumes your resources. Remember me talking about those web applications that live in Amazon or Microsoft Azure? You know, if you're getting that bad traffic, you're paying for it, right? Even if whether they're getting through or not, you're paying for it because they're consuming that bandwidth, and they charge based on the resources you use. It should be low touch, no touch. It should be easy to onboard a web application or login page and have it protected. And then again, all of these new tools, they introduce new alerts, right? You need some sort of an analytics engine to go ahead and pull that all together, right? And prioritize it and give you some actionable insights. Basically, what to do next. We saw this happening, right? What do I do about that? It gives you some information about that to go ahead and give you a direction to go into. And then finally, it needs to be easy to onboard, right? Because if it's hard, right, if you have a whole learning curve on it, then it just gets backburnered, right? It's, oh, I got to dedicate a whole hour to go ahead and onboard this new site, right? I'll do that when I got time. It should be able to be done in just a couple of minutes. So Imperva would like to help, right? We know these are trying times, and we all need a little help from each other. So we're here to help. Imperva is offering some free onboarding assistance. The protection is free of charge for 90 days, right? If you're interested in any of these solutions, we can talk to you about it. All right, so how do I get protected? It's really, it should be as easy as a 3-step process, right? And this is kind of a little bit about how we can do it, right? How I've seen it done myself. So I'm kind of speaking from my own personal experience. From your browser, right? Every browser kind of has its own development tools that you can turn on. When you try to log in, it should go ahead and tell you what that the login application is. Identify that that file that is the login application. So that's step 1. Step 2, onboard that login application. All right. So for Imperva, we onboard that into our console. And then step 3, we'll go ahead and do some testing. We'll do a failed login attempt, and then we'll log in with the actual credentials. And that way, our system sees, or any account takeover protection solution should be able to see what a failed login looks like and what a successful one looks like, and says, okay, I get it, right? If anybody does this, I'll be able to take action. This is what a good login credentials looks like. If you'd like to see that the full 3-minute onboarding, and that's all it takes, right, to go ahead and do that from our console. I posted the link here. I'll give you an opportunity to go ahead and screenshot that if you like, and take a look at that 3-minute process to go ahead and get onboarded and protected. Again, it's all about what can I do today. All right. Any questions so far, James?
No, not right now.
All right. So this is kind of a more detailed view at that dashboard I was talking about. Once you're onboarded, right, we kind of already looked at some of this stuff, right? This is what we want to look at. We want to see how many logins we're seeing, how many account takeover attempts there have been, and most importantly, how many have been compromised, right? And then we can go ahead and take some action here. We can go ahead and disable those accounts, right? Or reset the password and let people know, hey, you need to reset the password and before you can use this site. All right. So so what if we don't have a protection right now? What if we don't have any ATO protection of any kind in place? What if somebody does successfully get through my login page with stolen credentials? What are some of the risks there? All right. So ultimately, there are backend. A web application might lead to a backend database, and a successful ATO attack can leak sensitive information to the attacker. There are a number of other tools that can be put in place to monitor unauthorized traffic coming through, like a RASP, a runtime application self-protection plugin, right? That monitors the application itself, and it has visibility into the user account that's being used and the queries that are attempted to be sent to the backend database, hoping that that database is going to process that query and leak hundreds and thousands of customer information, credentials, things of that nature that can be used against you later on. And then there's DAM, database activity monitoring tools that run on the database server itself, right? They let you know not only what's happening externally, but from maybe from a web application using a service account, but internally, right? We're looking for insider threats as well, and they'll let you know, they'll log the activity that's happening there. Hopefully, there are some security policies in place to go ahead and prevent certain attacks from coming through, right? Should there be a leak or a compromise somewhere else, right? And then the ability of kind of bringing these tools together. Whatever solution is decided upon should be able to integrate your whatever cloud WAF solution that you have in place together with a RASP solution, together with a DAM solution, so that you could get that full big picture, that 50,000-foot view of everything that's going on, right? And you can kind of see, oh, there's this web application that's been compromised over here. I see some unauthorized stuff coming in through there, and I could see on the web application the queries that are being sent through, and I could see on the backend database, the service account is trying to do these things, right? You have full visibility to that. Again, lots of alerts going on there. You need some sort of an analytics engine to pull that all together and give you insights, tell you what the next step is, right, to take action and prevent a breach. And should a breach happen, to keep that as minimum as possible. 100 records being lost versus 100,000 or 10 million records being lost. Free tools that are out there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let me pause you there because we've got a couple of questions in the chat. First one was someone asked me to share the link for the YouTube video showing the ATO deployment, so I've done that. It's in the chat if you'd like to find it there. There was another question about how we can help protect a website that an organization doesn't necessarily host. Help me protect a website that I don't host. So the answer to that question is using our Cloud WAF and cloud services. If you don't happen to host it, but the domain name is under your control, and the SSL certificate is under your control, then we can help you host it. Then we can help you protect it, and we do have some customers that are doing that. If it's a website that's completely out of your control, then we would just, you would take it up with the provider, with the hoster, and ask them what type of security services they have available. Maybe they can add something. If not, obviously we're happy to talk to them. I hope that answers that question. And then there's another one about what about web apps that don't use just port 80 and 443? So both our cloud WAF and ATO solution, as well as the on-premise WAF, have the ability to use custom ports. So if you're using a port that's not one of those, no problem. We can accommodate.
All right. Thanks, James.
Sorry, got one more about.
Yeah,
got one more about on your last slide. You mentioned data security. So we had one question come in: does native DBMS, the native database security, provide sufficient protection? And the answer to that is not really. Right? It provides a little bit of protection, but if you're using only ACLs and role and permission management on the DBMS, even if you happen to be using a identity access manager or a privilege access manager, you're not fully secured. You have the feeling that you are, but the truth of the matter is that most breaches against a database where data is extracted happen because a legitimate credential was leaked, or perhaps an internal laptop or something like that was compromised. And from that point, an attacker was able to get at a privileged credential and log into the database. So if that happens, it's not exploiting a vulnerability on the database. An ACL on the database or a role management on the database doesn't really help you there, nor does database encryption, because it will be decrypted. That data will be decrypted for the legitimate credential that logged in. And so that's the danger that you run into when you're using only purely native solutions. Hopefully that answered that question. Great questions, by the way. Keep them coming. Use either the QA or a couple of them came across in the chat. And I don't know if we'll have time at the end, but happy to keep going here. So, Rich, back to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, James. Just to add to that native solution, right? Native being where you're using that server, that database server, to host that native solution, right? So you're using up resources on that server and taking away from the whole reason you built the server in the first place is to run database services, right? So a good solution is not going to depend on the resource that the database server depends on. It should be offboarded to something dedicated, an appliance, whether virtual or physical, to do all the heavy lifting, and let a database server be a database server. All right, good questions. All right, well, I also wanted to introduce some free tools that are available out there. One of which is the Cyber Threat Index, and the Cyber Threat Index basically lets you know, where the threats are, and in what industry, right? So, if you're in retail or finance or whatever, you can check this out. You can do a quick Google search on it, and it'll pop up for you. It's something Imperva hosts and provides free to the public. And we take all this information that we're pulling from our own POPs around the globe, and we're kind of putting it out there. We're just for free. Anybody who wants to take a look at that, it's a free publishing, and it's updated at least monthly, from month to month. And you can come in here and set filters on what industry you want to take a look at, or even do it by country. See what countries under threat the most. If you've got data centers there or whatever, it'll give you visibility to that. All right. So what can I do now? Right. So to address the heightened risk imposed by COVID-19 quarantine, Imperva Protection is being offered free for 90 days. Existing customers, if you're already one of our Cloud WAF customers, all you need to do is turn it on. Right. If you haven't been using it before, just know that you can switch it on, and there's no charge to use it. If you're not an Imperva customer and you'd like to go ahead and onboard some of your websites and get some of that protection in light of the heightened risks of today, just reach out to us, and we can set up an account for you. It's all free of charge for the next 90 days to help protect you during these difficult times. No strings attached. Right after 90 days, if you don't feel you need it or want it or whatever, just let us know, and we can turn it down for you. We all know that full-time employee resources are tight as well. As I mentioned early on in this webinar, you've got your IT and security teams, kind of running all over the place, just trying to keep the lights on. Right? We know that they're stretched thin, and we're here to help. Right? Our managed services are also being provided free of charge for 90 days to help with the onboarding. Again, if it's, hey, I just don't have an hour to go ahead and read into this and figure out how to do it, you don't have to. Right? Just reach out to us. We'll help you, right, and get you onboarded and protected. So that concludes my end of the webinar. If there's any other questions at this point that need to be answered, James, we can take those on. We still got a few minutes left within the hour. Any other questions that have come in?
Sure. There is a couple, and I think we've got a little bit of time here, so. Folks, feel free to add any questions you might have to the Q&A. But we had one come in regarding the credential stuffing threat and the account takeover, what if our application team is already limiting attempted logins and failed logins? That's a great question. And I would say that that sort of rate limiting on the application itself can be a decent mitigation, but the problem is the detection. If the adversary wants something badly enough behind your login page, if you're a financial institution and they can get to money transfers, or if you have a reward system and they can get to that, or if you're in retail and there's some sort of limited supply item or price scraping or something that they can do. If the reward is great enough, they will change their tactics. So instead of coming in from one IP address, they will switch IP addresses. If you have a rate limit set, they'll slow down. It's pretty easy for them to tell exactly where that threshold is, and they'll just slow down a little bit lower. We've even had some threats where they've started with one at a really high clip, then they slow it down, and then they actually spent a little bit more. It's a bigger investment on their end, but they would just buy a wider botnet and come at you from one IP address about every 2 or 3 minutes. And there's really nothing you can do on an application rate limit perspective that can stop that. So that's why you would need that. Let's see, keep the questions coming here. Does your solution integrate with a SIM like Splunk? The answer to that is yes, we do, as a matter of fact. Everything that Rich mentioned today does integrate with SIM. And we think that one of the nice things about the analytics is that not only does it make it easier for security teams to respond to incidents because they don't have to sift through hundreds of thousands of alerts. Instead, they're looking at a couple of dozen. But that goes for SIM as well. So instead of sending hundreds of thousands, we have one customer that's sending, almost 100 million a week before analytics. And now we can send fewer after the analytics to your SIM, saving on your SIM cost there. So I would say yes. Let me check to see if there are any more questions. While I'm checking, feel free to type them.
We'll also take them verbally too, if you want to ask them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so a couple things, if anybody's typing questions, we can cover. We've recorded this. So if you have a coworker who couldn't make it, or you think somebody might be interested, the presentation is available through recording for you guys to download and watch. That's one thing. Or, if you get bored watching, you run out of things on Netflix to watch, feel free to watch this again. So we do appreciate everybody attending. Thank you, Rich and James, for providing the content and answering the questions. Greatly appreciated. Leave us a note in chat if you'd like. I would also say this: give us some feedback for those of you that were invited by one of our AEs or whoever invited you. Give them feedback, both good and bad. We'd like to know what we did well, what we could do better. These are difficult times, and we're all trying to manage the best we can. And if we can put on another one of these in the coming weeks, it maybe can provide you some information, some insight, some knowledge around a topic that you're interested in. We'll do another one of these as well too. So, and it can be based off your feedback and any input you might want us to address. So we do appreciate that. So let me give one last check. Do we have any more questions, James? It doesn't look like we did.
No, I don't see any more. I can put some contact information in the panel in case you have any further questions. Feel free to reach out to these folks. And thank you, Rob, for coordinating the pizza.
So yeah, So everybody, thank you very much. Appreciate you showing up. Y'all stay safe and have a good day. Thanks.